Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the messengers in our home. Dear Kardec Radio listeners, welcome back to the messengers in our home. Tonight we're going to talk about chapter 40, heading to the countryside. But before we do that, I'd like to share some more feedback with you that Mackenzie started already last week from our friends of the Joanna D'Angelo Spiritus Society in California. So here we go. This is from Katie. Kardec Radio is a blessing. I first heard about it when our SSS study group was about to read Nosolar and told us that it was available as a podcast. Listening to the detailed explanations afterwards opened up a whole new light to the book that really touched my heart and nourished my soul. I'm spoiled now and want to listen to all the books this way because you've set the bar up so high. Thank you so much for starting this project and giving such A+ work to it. I really appreciate all your effort and look forward to listening to the messengers next. So thank you very much, Katie, and thanks everyone else. It's great to get some feedback and hear that the message is actually coming across how we are intended to. And as you know, at the moment we are towards the end of the book, The Messengers, and we are most likely going to continue the work, not quite sure how it continues, but stay tuned with it. Mackenzie and I are elaborating a plan right now. So, yeah, here we are. Let's come back to the messengers. Hello, Mackenzie.
Hi, Francisca. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to another chapter of the messengers in our home.
And before we start, let's take a moment, filling our hearts with gratitude, and elevating our thoughts to God, our Creator. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you so much for the gift of life. And thank you as well for all the opportunities to learn and to grow. And this week we have been meditating about the meaning of Thy will be done. So here we are, wanting to understand your laws better and delve deeper into ourselves as well, to learn more about how the universe works, how the interaction between the spiritual and physical plane works, and above all, how to put these lessons into our daily lives. And as we learn more about nature and its function, we praise you, dear God, for the perfection of the laws of nature, the laws of the universe, and ask you to please help us to open our hearts and our minds so that little by little we can absorb more and more of your teachings, understand you more, and feel your love and your presence more and more in our everyday life. And with your permission, we now would like to start our meeting. So be it. So, ready, steady, go. Chapter 40, heading to the countryside. Enjoy.
Chapter 40, heading to the countryside. Almost all the spirit workers were leaving the house on their way to their assorted tasks. Only a few friends involved with missions of aid and vigilance remained at Dona Isabel's residence. I noticed that Aniceto continued to give out various instructions, confidentially addressing certain co-workers regarding the mission that Telesforo had entrusted to him. Just before noon, however, he invited us to accompany him. In this workshop, he said, we can find vital renewal of our strength for our work. We receive reinforcements of energy, and this provides us with the nourishment needed to continue our efforts. But I'll have to say that, for many of us, last night was a series of long, exhausting activities. We need some rest. We'll return at dusk. Where were we going? I didn't know. I remembered that, even though some had actually rested in the home sanctuary during the night, most had worked intensely, and I concluded that if in the morning many had headed for their duties, others had sought needed repose. "Where are you headed?" asked a security guard who had become our friend. Before we could answer, Aniceto replied, "To the countryside." And specifically to Vicente and me, he remarked, "Let's use volutation, since we have no immediate plans in the center of the city." I noticed that it was now easier for me to use my ability to volutate. The learning excursion with its stop at the Campo da Paz aid station had done me much good. My training had improved. I felt strong enough to face vibrations of a lower order, and I had no problem mobilizing my resources. I also noticed that my visual abilities were growing appreciably. Up to that point, I had not noticed that I was now very surprised to observe while volitating. Before, I had seen only people, animals, vehicles, and buildings anchored to the ground. Now, my seeing abilities were expanding. From afar, I recognized the considerable weight of the air that was clinging to the surface. I had the impression that we were swimming in the upper zone of a sea of oxygen, as I saw down below in roiled waters a huge number of brothers and sisters plodding along, burdened with heavy diving gear in the muddy depths of the ocean. "Do you see those dark stains on the public street?" asked our guide, noticing our amazement and our increasing desire to learn. Since we didn't know what they were exactly, he continued to explain. "Those are clouds of various kinds of bacteria. They float around in compact groups in obedience to the principle of affinity. Look at those arabesques of shadow." And he pointed out certain buildings in areas of the city. Notice the large grayish or completely dark areas. Those are zones of inferior mental matter, matter that is continually emitted by a certain class of people. If we were to take more time with our investigation, we would also see monsters that plod along behind certain people, attracted by them. Giving a serious tone to his words, he remarked, "Humans are attacked not only by such clouds of bacteria, which are destructive to physical life, but by perverse forms of the darkness, which threaten their mental balance. As you can see, the watch and pray of the gospel has profound importance in every situation at any time. Only people with positive mentalities in the realm of higher spirituality can overcome the multiple influences of a lower nature." Wanting a fuller explanation, I asked, "But does the mental matter emitted by less evolved people have a life of its own, like the nuclei of microscopic corpuscles from which bodily illnesses spring?" Our kind mentor smiled curiously and replied, "Why wouldn't it? By now, you are aware of the fact that people live in a psychophysical body. We cannot consider just the physiological situation per se in the realm of diseases. We also have to consider the psychic condition of the incarnate personality. You see, just as a cloud of bacteria is produced by a sick body, A cloud of mental larvae is produced by a sick mind under the same circumstances. So, in the realm of individuals who are unaware of spiritual resources, souls, as well as bodies, become ill. That is why, in the future, the medicine of the soul will absorb the medicine of the body. Currently, on earth, we can provide treatment for the physical organism. Such a task makes the mission of comfort, instruction, and relief a worthy one. But as far as real healing is concerned, we must realize that this belongs exclusively to the Spirit itself. "My God!" exclaimed Vicente. "What dangers the ordinary human has to face!" "This is why," replied Aniceto, "terrestrial existence is a glorious opportunity for those who are interested in knowledge and self-elevation. And for this same reason, we teach the need for religious faith among human beings. In carrying out this campaign, we do not plan to intensify the disastrous passions of sectarianism, but to create a positive state of trust, optimism, and healthy vitality in the mind of each incarnate spirit. Until now, only faith has been able to provide this realization. Sciences and philosophies have paved the way, but the faith that conquers death is the vital seed. Possessing its eternal qualities, humans find enough spiritual dynamism to fight until they have achieved a full victory over themselves." Understanding that he needed to finish his explanation, he stated after a longer pause, "We all need to know how to emit vibrations and how to receive them. To reach a position of balance in this situation, incarnate men and women, as well as we ourselves, are engaged in a constant struggle. And since we already know something about eternity, we must not forget that every failure jeopardizes achievement and every noble effort invariably helps it." These explanations could not have been clearer. However, I was disconcerted by that vision of streets filled with sluggishly moving dark spots, affecting both humans and machines on the public avenues. Thirsty for knowledge, I returned to the subject. This lesson has incalculable value for me, and when I think of the high reproductive power of microbial flora... Aniceto did not let me finish. Knowing my natural question beforehand, he interrupted. "Yes, Andre, had it not been for the much greater power of the sun's light, coupled with Earth's magnetism, a power which intensely destroys in order to select life's manifestations on the Earth's surface, microbial flora of a lower order would not have allowed the existence of a single person on the face of the earth. That is why the soil and plants are filled with curative and transforming properties." And nodding his head expressively, he concluded, "In spite of the immense power of this divine resource, as long as humans, the heirs of God, cultivate the lower realms of life, there will also be lower creations in sufficient number for the truceless battle that the authentic qualities of evolution must win." And tonight we're talking about chapter 40, heading to the countryside. And by now, as you've been following, last chapter we noticed that the day is breaking, they are finishing their tasks at the house, and they are leaving. They are leaving the house, and they started talking to a few friends, so on and so forth. And Andre starts this chapter by saying and finalizing that idea that they are leaving the house. They are finally leaving Dona Isabel's house. And he says something at the very beginning of the chapter, which is really, really interesting. And it comes to, I wouldn't say as a conclusion, but I would say as a closing line or a closing idea to some of the things that we've been talking about last chapter, which was what type of house, what type of place do we want to build for ourselves? And by place, I'm not talking about specifically the physical place, right? Because it doesn't matter if I live in a mansion, in a huge house, or if I live in a shack, in a very small or humble house. Because if we look at this, if we look at what we mentioned last week, talking about Dona Isabel's house, we know that she has a very simple, a very humble house, and she's very poor, right? Remember, when she was talking to her daughters and to her son, one of them was talking about what type of food do we have? Why do we only eat once or twice and the other family eats much more than we do? So by those small details, we know that she is a very poor person that cannot afford a lot of luxury, a lot of stuff in her house, and probably has a very, very humble house. But so it's not about the exterior, right? It's always about the interior. It's about how our mind and how our spiritual work is doing. And that's what this very first paragraph has, like I was saying, this closing line or this closing idea to this, how are we building our own home? And this meaning our internal home, meaning person by person, but also and as well as our home, the home of our family, or for that matter, if we are, what type of spirit center are we building? What type of place that I work am I building together with my colleagues, with my co-workers, right? So what Andre says here is only a few friends involved with missions of aid and vigilance remained at Dona Isabel's residence. So what is he saying here? A lot of the spirits who were working there, they are leaving, either to continue their work or, as we already know, because we heard the reading of the chapter, that they're going to rest. They're going to recover their energies. But Andre says that only a few friends involved with missions of aid and vigilance. What can we think about this aid and vigilance, right? Naturally, if we are trying to build a house, if we are trying to build this home, and we are doing our God at Home meeting, our gospel at home, if we are really striving to spiritually build a better place for us to live, it is natural that we will have protection. And what type of protection is that? Naturally, it's like a physical barrier or a spiritual barrier. And why wouldn't there be good spirits that would stay there to help us do that? So if that place is a place that they will need, they will use to help other people, it is natural that with our help, with our mental help, they will find it easier to help us to maintain that place a healthy place, spiritually speaking. And some of the spirits who are there, they are aiding other spirits. Probably they are walking around, they are stopping by because they see that they can enter, they can be helped, and then they go into our houses to be helped by these aid spirits who are there. And also the vigilant spirits who are there to protect and to not allow or to reduce the amount of spirits who can enter our home without being invited, right? So it is, like I was saying, it is a very thoughtful and closing idea to what we were talking about last week. So the more we do, the more we get helped, right? By ourselves and by the good spirits who are together with us. So it is a double dip, right? I do it once and I get twice, right? Because the good spirits are there and they are doing their part. With our help, they can do it an even better job. So it is very interesting for us to really think about trying and striving to do the best that we can to increase the harmony in our homes, to raise our thoughts, and to be more loving at all times, independently of where we are and where we live. So, continuing to tell us what's happening, Andre allows us to know that Aniceto keeps telling other spirits what they need to do because of what Telesforo had entrusted to him, and they keep working there. And just before noon, Andre says that Aniceto invites him, Andre, and Vicente to accompany him, right, to accompany Aniceto. And while they're walking, he says that, well, in this place, in this house, in this workshop, as he calls, we can find vital renewal of our strength for our work. Why? Like we were saying, right? Like Andre keeps repeating, and we keep understanding from what he says, that naturally, if we are doing a job that it's spiritually uplifting, good energies from the good spirits will be brought there. Our energies will refill us, will renew us to some degree, and naturally, these energies will renew these spirits who are working there. And that's what Aniceto is telling us. However, because sometimes the amount of energy that's spent is greater than the amount of energy that we were able to receive at that moment, some spirits will need to rest, will need to take a deep breath, will need to go out and rest a little to recover those energies and come back to work, like we keep repeating as well. Work is necessary. We basically work whenever we can, but there will be times when we, and for that matter, any spirit will need to rest. And some spirits will need less rest than others, but there will be a time where basically everyone, and here, of course, when I say everyone, a person could say, oh, even Jesus. Well, even Jesus, but I'm not talking about these high-level spirits, which we don't understand, right? We're so far away from them that it's kind of hard for us to really imagine. We would say that they never rest, but it's going to be a good guess, but I don't know how it works. But for us, for spirits who are in our level, even Aniceto, even Andre, even those spirits who are there, Telesforo and all the ones that we already know, there will come a time when they will need to rest. They will need to take a deep breath, or maybe just by drinking some water, some magnetized water, a soup of some sort, they will be able to recover fully and more, how can I say, more quickly than others, and that's basically how it is. And that's what Aniceto says. Well, we're going out to take some rest, to recover a little bit, and then we will come back to when it's kind of dark again. We'll return at dusk. That's what Aniceto tells us. And Andre at that moment doesn't know where they're going, right? And he remembers and he says that some of the spirits were able to rest, while some others were really working hard, and many needed to rest, to get some repose, and many were able to go out and keep working. Like I was saying, every spirit has a different need. At one point, probably, they will need to rest as well, but some will need less rest. And then there comes the spirit who asks, oh, where are you going? And Aniceto says, well, we're going to the countryside. Well, I think everybody understands the idea of what a countryside is, right? Usually when we say countryside is, well, we're going to get out of the town. We're going to get out of the concrete jungle, right? We're going to a place where nature abounds, where we can really find a place of where we can get the energy from nature, right? Instead of just these buildings that we build and construct all the time. So Aniceto looks at them and say, hey, let's not walk. Let's just use volitation, because we don't have any plans here in the city, so we can get quicker to where we need to go. And as they are moving, Andre describes a little bit what's going on, and he says that he can perceive things differently than he was able to perceive before, that he can spiritually see more details, while before he could see only the physical stuff. Now he can clearly see how the atmosphere is divided, and so on and so forth. Like I keep saying from time to time, our idea here is not to discuss the physicality of things, explaining the physics of how the spiritual world works, because at least for us here at this program, at this study, is not necessarily this science that we are interested on. We are interested in actually really thinking about ourselves, right, to improve ourselves. If it's to improve our senses, that's great. The only question that I have here, and while with this paragraph, this description that Andre gives to us is, okay, if we had that ability that Andre is describing here, to see a little bit more than what we regularly see, how and what for would we use that ability for? And this is a question for all the mediums out there who are listening to us right now, right? Who have the ability of seeing the spirits around, have the ability of hearing what the spirits are saying, who have the ability of automatic writing, right? Of psychographing messages. Why and how? What for am I using those abilities for? And that's the question that I think that this point that Andre is making here raises. If I have the ability and I don't use it for the good, why do I have it? Right? It's an inner question that I would really like to pose here for all of us, right? Or any kind of ability. Here he's talking about this special ability. But let's say I have a special ability, let's say there's somebody out there, right, that has a special ability of being a great nurse. How am I using my great ability of being a nurse? Or I have a great ability of being a great mother. How am I using my great ability of being a great mother? And let's put it forward. Push it a little harder. I have the great ability of being a mother, but I am not a mother, either because my sons, my daughters already left, or because I was not able ever to be a parent. But I know that I am a great mother. I know that I would be a great father. Why can't I, for example, adopt a child? Why can't I, for example, not adopt to live with me, but adopt a child or a hospital, a children's hospital, so that I would go there and have all those kids and treat them as my sons, as my daughters, as my children, right? And why can't I put that ability to use, to a good use, to help build a better community where I am living on? So that's why sometimes when we get stuck in some of these conversations about these Andre Luiz's books, that we tend to focus basically on some words and some science, and I always prefer to take those teachings and bring it to myself, bring it to me, and how can that teaching, how can those physical ideas, right, be put to use in my own life? And that's something that we really need to think about. So, and then after all that description that he gives us, Aniceto looks at them and say, "Do you see those dark stains on the public street?" And they say, "Yeah, we can see that." So, and then he says, "Well, those are clouds of various kinds of bacteria. They float around in groups in obedience to the principle of affinity." And then he points to a different place and he says, "Notice the large grayish or completely dark areas. Those are zones of inferior mental matter." Let's say I just sneezed. If I could see what came out of my nose, that cloud, right, that usually comes out when we sneeze. Even if we don't see anything with our regular eyes, but if we could see what came out, all the bacteria, and I apologize for if you're creating all that mental image right now, but we do this all the time, right? It's something that sometimes we can, but most of the times we cannot control. We have a lot of bacteria there. Sometimes if we got the flu, we have viruses there. What Aniceto is telling us here is that when we are speaking about the spiritual side, we would see those clouds of bacteria, but it's not just the physical bacteria that we are seeing. We are seeing the mental bacteria, if we could use that image, right? And those clouds, or completely dark areas or grayish areas, right, are created by zones, by people who are put together and thinking about destructive behaviors, destructive ideas, right? And that's what he wants us to understand. The same way, and if we can compare and contrast what we were talking in the beginning of this chapter, but to what we were talking a little bit in the two or three previous chapters, which was, how do we want the environment of my house, of the Spirit Center that I go to, of the place that I work in or at, how do I want that environment to feel like if a spirit would see it from the spiritual side? What is the spiritual environment there? So what Aniceto is now showing Andre, Vicente, and us is that the same thing can happen to both ways, right? If I keep thinking good thoughts, having good actions, performing good deeds, that environment will be clean, will be clear. But if I start doing the opposite, I will have a darker place, mentally darker place, psychologically heavier place, spiritually darker, spiritually grayish place, as he says. And those mental clouds of bacteria will be attracted to those types of places. And that's what he finalizes by saying that if we were to take more time with our investigation, we would also see monsters that plot along, that follow behind certain people, attracted by them, because it's the law of affinity, right? Usually what happens is I will attract people that are like me. So if my mind and my thoughts are of a certain kind, those groups of spirits, those dark clouds of matter, will attach to me, because that's what and that's how this law of affinity works. We will be joined together. Oh, so it's because they want to get me, they want to, sometimes it is, and then this would be called in some degree obsession. However, we have to remember that a person only enters your house if you allow that person to enter your house. Our mind is a house. To what kind of people, to what kind of spirits am I opening the door of my house to? What will open the door to certain people? That's a question that we need to pose to ourselves. So if a spirit is passing by, in my mind, in my thoughts, I have dark thoughts, I have negative thoughts, it is natural that a person that has that same kind of attraction to those topics, to those themes, to those ideas, will stay by our side, and then they will start influencing our thoughts. We would be influencing their thoughts, and we would be walking along, and we would be feeding from each other, attracted to each other. Not because they are bad, not because we are bad, but because we still didn't move out from that zone of thinking bad thoughts or disturbing thoughts or bad ideas or hateful ideas or revengeful ideas and ideas of that sort. And Aniceto goes on and he puts like an even more serious tone when he says the following. He says, humans, and I'm quoting here because I think this is very important for us to reread and to re-listen. Humans are attacked not only by such clouds of bacteria, which are destructive to physical life, but by perverse forms of the darkness, which threaten their mental balance. See, this is exactly what we were talking about, but of course in his words, right? We attract the bacteria, the physical bacteria, for lots of reasons. Some people will go through the same type of cloud of bacteria. Some will get sick, some will not get sick. Why? It may be due to physical things. Let's say you're more protected because, let's say, you eat more healthily. You eat, let's say, oranges and vitamin C, and the other one doesn't. So the virus, the flu virus, will get more resistance from a body that eats things that are against its own nature. And I, who don't, for example, or you who don't as well, will be more prone to receiving those viruses and become sick. What Aniceto is telling us here is the same, but not only physically, also mentally, also spiritually. It's the same idea. If I am healthier spiritually, it will be harder for me to fall. However, if I am not, I can be disbalanced or unbalanced by and be threatened by those types of clouds, right? And that's when he comes and he shows us the idea of behind what Jesus tells us, and this is he mentions by saying this, quote, "As you can see, the watch and pray of the gospel has profound importance in every situation at any time," unquote. That's what he says. And what he is mentioning here, what he's saying here when he mentions the watch and pray of the gospel is a passage that Jesus says that's in Luke. It's chapter 21, verse 36, when he says, "Be always on the watch and pray that you may be able to escape all this that is about to happen." Watch and pray. So we need to be vigilant at all times. We need to be at the present moment. We need to be focused. We need to understand that we need to be aware of what's going on outside, of what types of influences I am getting at all times. And just one small advice here. Don't substitute my words or Jesus' words, watch, for paranoia, right? It's not about being paranoid. No, it's about the regular type of thing. Let's say you are driving, right? You need to watch. You need to be vigilant to what's going on your surroundings, right? You need to stop. You need to go slow sometimes. You can go fast sometimes. This is to be watchful. This is to be present. I need, when I'm driving, to be focused on what I'm doing at that moment. If I try to do 3, 4, 5 different things while I'm driving, most certainly I'll be hit or I'll hit somebody and I can cause or be involved in an accident. Our lives are the same way. We need to be watchful at all times. But more than this, Jesus says, watch, but also pray so that you can get help. You can be helped when you need help. Because we all do need help, right? Sometimes, and some people more than others, but we all need help. Sometimes it is with our homework. Sometimes it is with our work. Sometimes it is at home. Sometimes it is at our business, at work. It doesn't matter. We all need help, and we need to help as well. So we need to be watchful, and we need to pray so that we are protected, so that we keep paying attention to what's going on and trying not to deviate from the mental healthy balance that we need to have at all times to be healthier, to be better, to be more loving, to be more responsible, and so on. So this watch and pray is very important for all of us at all times. And see, Aniceto is using this to show us about our mental health or this spiritual health, but also for our physical health. So, of course, it is a very small part of this chapter, but this is so big. We could fork here in so many directions this teaching, and we don't have time to do so, but I would encourage you to really think a little bit more about how to be more present in your day, at every moment, how to be more vigilant, how to be more eyed open, right? Open our eyes to what's going on in my surrounding, to be more aware, right? But not to be paranoid, but to really think about what's going on. How am I dealing with this idea? How do I feel the air in my face? How is my driving? How is my voice when I'm speaking to a person? How is my hearing ability to really focus on what the other person is trying to tell me? And then, am I praying? Am I thankful for what's been going on in my life? Am I raising my hands to God and say, God, thank you. You are my creator. You are the one who gave me life. Thank you for this. And then, if we think that we need help, if we think that we need something, why not ask, right? To show that we are humble by recognizing that we cannot do everything by ourselves, that we need help, and when we receive, to be thankful for receiving it. So that's the watch and pray in a nutshell, right? It's only a very small explanation or thought that I would like to say about this. Maybe we will talk more in other chapters here when they mention it again. And so if we do this, we will overcome multiple, like he says here, influences over lower nature. If we keep doing this and practicing the watch and pray at all times, it will become easier and easier for us to reach better results at this. But they go on talking a little bit about this, right? And Andre asks, well, you were talking about bacteria. Bacteria has life. Are these clouds that you're talking about, this mental matter that less evolved people are thinking, are creating, does it have a life of its own, like the bacteria, like the nuclei of microscopic corpuscles? As this is a beautiful sentence that he creates. And remember, he is a doctor, so he can use those words very regularly, and he's not trying to show off. He's a doctor, so these are kinds of words that he probably uses when he's talking to other doctors. And Aniceto says, oh, why wouldn't it? Right? Life is not just spiritual life, right? A plant is not a spirit, and it has life. It's the vital fluid is there, is giving life and giving properties of life to a plant. The same to animals. To us, we have life. Our body, is alive. A spirit can detach from the body, and the body can be kept alive through machines without a spirit connected to it. So there is life there. Why wouldn't there be life in a different type that we don't know? And that's what Aniceto invites us to think about when he says, hey, look, we have a psychophysical body. It's physical, but it's also a psychic body, a spiritual body, right? And a different vibration. And the same thing for the smaller life forms. And he says, quote, we cannot consider just the physiological situation per se in the realm of diseases. We also have to consider the psychic condition of the incarnate personality, unquote. So, we are, I'm sorry to repeat this, we are not the body that we have. We are spiritual beings in a physical experience. Our body has a life of its own, but I, as a spirit, have a life of my own. My perispirit, or the matter that connects my body to what I am as a spirit, also has a certain type of life, a certain type of energy that keeps it alive. Keeps it connected to me as a spirit. Our physical and our psychic or spiritual abilities, mental abilities, it influences me. It influences me as a spirit, and it influences my body as well. And he goes on. You see, just, I'm quoting here, right? What Aniceto is saying. Quote, you see, just as a cloud of bacteria is produced by a sick body, a cloud of mental larvae is produced by a sick mind under the same circumstances. Unquote. So what Aniceto is trying to tell us is, look, don't think that just because you're a spirit and you're not connected to a physical dense body, that you're not going to be affected by some kind of bacteria, which he doesn't call it bacteria, he calls it a mental larvae, which is basically the same thing. He's just trying to make a difference so that we don't say bacteria, and people will think, oh, but and then a bacteria from our world can affect a spirit on the other. No, that's why he's using two different expressions here, so that we can disconnect one from the other, but at the same time he's making the comparison so that we can understand that there is these mental larvae that produced by certain kinds of spirits. If I'm not aware of it, if I'm not watching and praying, if I'm not vigilant enough, I will be affected. We can be affected as spirits. So, and he goes on, in the realm of individuals who are unaware of spiritual resources, souls as well as bodies become ill. End quote. That's what we are talking about here, right? He's just explaining. I'm just putting some more words so that we can go a little bit further on what he's saying, or understanding a little different, or having a better understanding of what's going on. It happens, and who controls it? That's the big question, right? Who controls it? I control it. I have the power to reduce some of the contamination that I am able to get from those types of bacteria. In the material world, we are prone to some diseases. How do we protect ourselves? Wash your hands, reduce the flu. If you know that a person is sick, and that sickness, that illness is contagious, then you protect yourself if you go visit. If you can avoid it, you don't go visit to let the person get out of the worst phase of the sickness, and then you go visit after that. So those types of protections. Spiritually, how can we do that? We protect ourselves mentally. We say to ourselves, and we behave naturally, we behave better, we create those defenses so that when we get in touch with those, we don't get affected as much. And then he finalizes this paragraph, which is great, is one of the greatest teachings of this chapter specifically, is when he compares and he says, well, our medicine here on earth, right? He is talking about the medicine on the spiritual realm. So converting to this, he says, the medicine of the body will one day be absorbed by the medicine of the soul, because we can provide comfort, instruction, and relief to the body. But as far as real healing is concerned, he ends, we must realize that this real healing belongs exclusively to the spirit itself. We can heal the body, but if the spirit is sick, even if I don't get sick again in this body at this life, if the sickness continues and I don't get better inside myself, not physically, but mentally, spiritually speaking, I will become sick again physically, because this kind of sickness starts in the soul, it starts in me as a spirit. It is not a sickness of the body, started in the body, but in the spirit. Vicente exclaims, my God, what dangers the ordinary human has to face once we realize that this is our life, that this is what we live, that this is what we are, that we are not a body, that we are spirits. We will start to understand more and more about this, and we will grow. aren't we doing that so already? I think so. I think that these days, with more knowledge, and we see a lot more people talking about this, right? Instead of just paying attention to what the body has, to what the body does, they and we are paying more and more attention to what we do mentally, to what we do spiritually to ourselves. And Aniceto goes and talks a little bit on that side by saying that this is the reason why we have to really think about knowledge and self-elevation. Religion would have and has that task. And we are not creating these faith-based religions just to separate people. No, it would be to create a, and I'm going to quote here because I think this is also very, very, very interesting the way he says, quote, we do not plan to intensify the disastrous passions of sectarianism, which is division, right? Creating sects and dividing people, but to create a positive state of trust, optimism, and healthy vitality in the mind of each incarnate spirit. End quote. So this idea of putting faith in the lives of people is not to create a separation, but to create a positive state of trust, optimism, and healthy vitality, which these days we can clearly see it getting increased. But what I think is even more interesting that he says, and remember this book was written in 1940s, right? Only these days we see more of a research on what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. But when he says, and once again, I'm quoting because these words are very important. He starts the next sentence saying, quote, until now, and this is, I'm putting an accent here, right? Until now, only faith has been able to provide this realization. Sciences and philosophies have paved the way, but the faith that conquers death is the vital seed. So he says, until now, only faith has been able to provide this realization. Until now. What I'm reading here goes this way. Up to this moment, only faith was able to give us that. Because science was in the Dark Ages. Philosophy was in the Dark Ages. However, we can use science to provide a positive state of trust, optimism, and healthy vitality. We will not need to separate science, religion, and philosophy as if they are pitting against each other. The day we are really able to put these three things together and join these three things with art, we will be able to be even healthier than with one of them alone or with two of them alone. Faith can give us that. But these days, science and philosophy can also give us that if we know how and where to look. And I'm saying this because I'm reminded of a person that has been interviewed by Vanessa Anceloni quite a few times on her show on Saturdays here at Kardec Radio, right? When she interviews Dr. Stephen Post, which has a very, very interesting and very powerful work on the idea that it is good to be good. And not only spiritually. And for example, he has a book that is entitled Why Good Things Happen to Good People. And another book that he has, The Hidden Gifts of Helping. So it is very interesting that science these days, and he's not connected to any specific religion, he does the work scientifically showing that the more good we do to other people, the more good we do to ourselves. Just showing how much Jesus' assertive was correct on saying that love each other, right? Love your neighbor and love yourself. This is part of a natural law that the more we think good things, the more good things happen to us. What I give to the universe gives back to me. We can find so many other sayings about this, and people would say, oh, this is just faith-based. These days, science is proving that the more good we do to others, the more we also receive. So if you want to look at this and think of this as, let's say, a selfish thing to do good to others, do it thinking that is selfishness, but it is improving your own life by improving other people's lives. Why would this be selfish, right? If we are doing for everybody, for me and for the others. When we really think about our lives as a connection that we have with every single human being and every single being on this planet and outside of this planet, the more we will be able to grow, the more we will be able to be happy. And once we understand this, then it comes the realization of what Aniceto finishes this thought here when he says that possessing its eternal qualities, humans find enough spiritual dynamism to fight until they have achieved the full victory over themselves. So what he's saying is, okay, I don't have all the powers in the world, so I can use the ideas of others, the help of others, so that I can grow and I can, let's say, grow and become a better person and fight over what my struggles. And one day, when I have that power, complete power within myself, then I will really have achieved a different kind of level, and I will be able to do even more and even more and even more and more and more, and that's how it usually goes. But he finalizes by saying this: we all need to know how to emit vibrations and how to receive them. We need to understand that this exchange happens all the time, that we are being influenced and that we can influence others. And we need to know how to send these vibrations and how to receive these vibrations. Because let's say you're going to talk to a person and the person is, let's say, very, very unbalanced. Well, let's say the person has depression. How much of that depression we will be able to listen to be near that person without being pulled down to that level, right? So we need to know how to receive those vibrations. And how do we receive those vibrations? We have to understand and watch and pray so that we don't get caught in that specific web. And that's why he says, and he goes on, to reach a position of balance in this situation, incarnate men and women, as well as we are ourselves, he's talking about discarnate ones, are engaged in a constant struggle. So we need to understand that so that we can be aware of what's going on and can be prepared to fight, to really go ahead and say, I can do it. Maybe not alone. Maybe that's why Andre is with Vicente at all times, because maybe one cannot do it all alone. They need each other to complement each other, to be a support, to support one another. And we have to understand that every noble effort invariably helps to overcome these situations, as well as if we fail, we can jeopardize the achievement. But we need to focus on doing it right, of keep going, of getting help, of having a good mental vibration, a good mental attitude, so that I can help and I can grow with this. And to finalize, Andre starts to think about all those mental larvae, right, that we were talking about, and he says, well, bacteria, they reproduce very quickly, and maybe he's going to start talking about these mental larvae reproducing and so on, to which Aniceto looks at him and said, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that's correct. These mental larvae could be reproducing very quickly, but that's one of the things that God gave us for us to handle this situation. What is that? The sun's light. The light of the sun can help. That's why light is very important to reduce those types of mental larvae that we have. That's why it is so different during the night without the sunlight to control some sorts of thoughts, and it is different when the sun is out, when the sunlight is out there, let's say destroying or helping to destroy some parts of these mental larvae that are floating around, we could say that. But also, in what he says is not just the sunlight. The sunlight is for that part, but also the Earth's magnetism, when he says that this magnetism together with the sunlight, it helps, right, to control some parts of these microbial flora of a lower order. Without these two sources of energy, right, this magnetism, the Earth's magnetism, the magnetic field of the Earth and the sun, the sunlight, we are being protected as well from different types of larvae, we could say, because it's the word that he uses here. And he finalizes by saying that the soil and plants are filled with curative and transforming properties. And if we know how to use these, and we know how many types of, we call them drugs, but we can call them medicine, right? We can use, teas, and we can use certain types of roots, right, to create medicine for ourselves, and we can use vegetables and all these types of fruits, and to have a healthier life. And with these thoughts, he goes and concludes by saying, I'm going to read it once again, quoting him, and have a brief explanation so that we can try to think a little bit further about why do we still need food, for example. Why do we still need to use plants and the soil for us to create medicine and to create energy for ourselves? He says, quote, "In spite of the immense power of this divine resource, as long as humans, the heirs of God, cultivate the lower realms of life, there will also be lower creations in sufficient number for the truceless battle that the authentic qualities of evolution must win." Unquote. What Aniceto, at least what I can understand, and I would very much appreciate if you can put in some words on these thoughts, so that we can maybe discuss a little bit further this explanation that Aniceto gives to us. But what he is probably helping us to understand here is we are heirs of God. We were created in God's image. We have the power to create. We have the power to transform. We have the power to energize ourselves. However, we are still incarnated, right? We still have a physical body that still needs physical energy, physical food for our body to survive. So what Aniceto is trying to tell us here is that as long as we are material, we will need material. We will need material things. The more we evolve, the more we get rid of materiality, the less materiality I will need. But of course, he's not saying this in just, how can I say this? He is not just talking, because he is talking here about lower realms of life, right? And lower creations, talking about this food or talking about the grass that he's walking on, right? And because he's talking about the soil and the plants, right? The next chapter, he's going to talk. We are going to talk about trees. Now, the title of the chapter is Amongst the Trees, chapter 41. So he is naturally talking about these lower, quote unquote here, life forms, right? But it's lower just because if we compare it to spiritual, but it's not lower in terms of quality, because it is from that lower, quote unquote here, type forms of life that we get our energy to survive. So it is very important for us. So it's not lower in importance, it's lower just comparing material to spiritual. The more we grow, the more we tend to create higher forms of life, the less we're going to need the lower forms of life. That's basically what he means here. One day, we will not have the need to feed on material things. When will this happen? When we don't have a physical body anymore. It will take a long time. Meanwhile, we can start reducing our footprints here on Earth, right? Doing whatever we can to reduce the exaggeration of consumption of material things, be it in terms of food, be in terms of things that we buy, be in terms of things that we use and that we throw away, right? That we don't use, by wasting energy, by throwing food out without eating, by, doing whatever we can to reduce our lower or our consumption of lower forms of life, of material life, and by consuming and creating higher forms of life, which is usually connected to love, to the love that we give to others, to the love that we give to ourselves, to the love that we most of all send out to the universe, send out to our Creator. So let's love, let's create higher forms of life, mental life, spiritual life, loving, and loving. And I hope that this week we can all generate love, and love wherever we go, whatever we say, whatever we think. I hope you all have a great week. See you next time, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.